Hello, I'm New Central Maine meteorologist Jason Nappi, recapping the storm, the biggest one of the season by far statewide. We'll talk about it now. East Millinocket, 29 inches of snow that came down, heading up north. There's Central Highlands up towards the county. New Gloucester, 2.5 inches of sleet. Now, that's like kind of version of ice, like ice pellets, so it doesn't cling to, power lines or limbs. Where that is just really just hard to kind of walk through and even plow. Portland Jetport, almost 3/4 of an inch of that ice, of the freezing rain that was clinging to everything around southern Maine as we got into yesterday in the evening time and early in the morning when it was over. Precip types, we had all 4 wintry precip types that come through. Rain, which is you have the snow that melts right through that column of air. It's all warm. It's rain almost top to bottom. Obviously, there's always snow up in the sky, the top there. Cold air, then a little melting going on here through the warm air, and then the cold at the surface kind of stuck there. That's the freezing rain we had in Portland, in Cumberland, in Yarmouth, in Kennebunk, and then we had the sleet, the bouncing around going on. So what happens with sleet, you have the snow, that's going to melt a little thin layer of warm air, and then you get a bigger layer of cold air, so it has time, that kind of ice crystal that's melting, it has time to kind of basically freeze into this little ice pellet, okay? Gets kind of stripped of the snow around it, right? So it turns into this ice pellet, freezes pretty solid like an ice pellet, and it just kind of bounces off the trees, the limbs, the power lines. And then we go into this, the white gold we had, the powder. That was the snow which was inland, where it stayed top to bottom cold basically all the way through the storm. So how about the snow and ice reports? You see here the 29 inches over there towards East Millinocket, over towards Aroostook County, 25.8, Bryant Pond, Oxford Hills, Carrabassett Valley, 25, heading down to Livermore Falls, 20 inches. And then the ice, the devastating part of this storm was the ice. The Jetport there, almost 3/4 of an inch. Kennebunk, about 1/2 an inch. That's a lot of ice. Old Orchard Beach, Falmouth, Yarmouth, pretty much entire Saginaw County, pretty much 100% was without any form of power for a good portion of the night. And then over towards Orland, that right there over towards the kind of the Penobscot Bay region there, heading up mid-coast, heading up down east. So a devastating storm. I hand drew the snowfall plot here so you can look at what happened. Imagine making this forecast, right? 1 to 3, southern coast there, southern York County, and then you jump to 3 to 6. 1 to 3 over towards Washington County along the coastline, Eastport, Machias, Cowles. Then you're at that 3 to 6 where that mixing happened with sleet and the freezing rain. 6 to 12 inland from that, Sanford, Lewiston, Auburn, Augusta, up towards Bangor, getting up around that 12 to 18, 18 to 24 north of that, and then the 24 to 30 jackpots, Mars Hill, Millinocket, down towards the Carrabassett Valley, the Oxford Hills, and also back towards the presidential range of New Hampshire, the White Mountains, Wildcat, for example, getting a lot of snow. I mean, look at all these storm reports that came through from this one storm. Not even a nor'easter, okay? It didn't have the wind. We didn't have a storm that really just bombed out with pressure and got stronger. Okay, Nova Scotia on the eastern side got the wind, the power outages, and the rain. We're on the western, northwestern side, 17 freezing rain reports, 6 heavy rain, 9 thunderstorm wind damage, sleet. Look at the snow, 286 or so, all of here just looking at Maine, okay? And this is what happened. Mostly snow, the darker blue, the purple, but then here's that ice threat that popped up. Once again, we had started off the day, it was snow, and then we had that layer of cold air that just kind of hung around, and eventually, once we lost that March sun angle, what happened is that the freezing rain no longer was melting, okay, when it reached the ground, which was taking in that solar radiation. It no longer was melting. It became sleet, it became freezing rain. So you have that very thin layer here of that, you see here under the cloud here, at the ground level, very thin layer of that colder, dense air. So snow melts, and then there it is, freezing rain. That kind of the bigger layer that we had where the sleet came down, that, for example, was because we had that kind of a slightly bigger layer of that colder, dense air. Where it was a thin layer is where we had the big problems, where the freezing rain, much more devastating than sleet. So it all comes down to precipitation type, and we had basically 4 of them yesterday, and we had that big wedge of warm air come in, tried to scour out the cold air. It did not everywhere. The freezing rain there was the biggest issue. So that's the storm, the biggest one of the season so far, probably the last one. We'll keep a very close eye on what's going to be happening on Tuesday as freezing rain threat does pop up with a little wave of a big storm to our south, sending us some light precip. It's not going to be anything like that. We're not going to see feet of snow, but there is a threat for a light glaze. Updates on the socials this week. I thank you so much for watching and being a part of the community.